Hello, and welcome to Book Reviews Kill, a podcast about fantasy, sci-fi, and horror novels. I'm Evan.
And I'm Chad.
And I'm Effie.
And today you're joining us for our recap and discussion of Red Rising, Book 1 in the Red Rising series by Pierce Brown. And joining us for this entire series is the wonderful, the beautiful Effie Bishop, my partner and co-habitant. Effie, thank you so much for joining us on this incredible ride that is Red Rising.
You're welcome.
I am so excited to have a new voice on Book Reviews Kill. We just thought it'd be fun to add in Effie, Evan's partner. And before we get going, Effie, I just want to sidebar and say thank you so much. And I think I can speak for all of the Book Reviews Kill listeners for giving us so much of your partner's time. I know there's so many nights that we are up till 4 a.m. working hard. That's time that he doesn't get to cuddle with you. So I just really, really appreciate it. And so do all the listeners. So you're a boss. Thank you.
Pat and I have both read this series, and so this is a reread for both of us, and we thought it would freshen things up to bring someone on who not only has never read Red Rising, but hasn't really read any science fiction book series before. Like, there's no fantasy series Effie has read.
Have you ever read like Lord of the Rings or Narnia or any of the classics?
No, the only fiction series that I've ever read is Harry Potter when I was a little kid, and Hunger Games when I was a bigger kid.
Didn't you read Uglies by Scott Westerfield too?
Oh yeah, I read Uglies in like 6th or 7th grade. I was still a kid also. I mostly read nonfiction. Like, I read science nonfiction.
But not science fiction.
Well, I did read the one Ursula Le Guin book.
Oh yeah, Effie really likes Ursula Le Guin. But Effie, before we get into the recap, what did you think about the first book in this series?
I liked it. I liked it a lot more than I was expecting.
You read it in like 2 days.
I read it in like 2 days.
Yeah, me too.
I thought I was just going to have to push through this for you guys, but I like really couldn't stop reading it, especially like in the last half of the book.
We invited Effie to join us like 2.5 days before we wanted to record this episode. So we're like, Effie, we're like, oh yeah. She was like, I'll totally do that. And then we're like, can you do it in like 2.5 days though? She's like, what? Like, because I have school and because you're in college right now, right?
Yeah, I'm on summer break for once.
Oh, so we're hitting it at the perfect time.
Yep.
Yeah.
I actually initially had asked her if she wanted to do Malazan with us. And then I showed her Gardens of the Moon, and she was like, why would I ever? And then I showed her Toll the Hounds, and it's like 1,015 pages or something.
This is so much better.
Yeah, she was definitely not enthused.
No, and not only that, we would have like
Malazan.
ruined her love of fantasy forever,
maybe,
you know?
or
like,
maybe,
she
probably would have loved it eventually, but it would have taken a little while, probably. I would have definitely...
Those books are an undertaking. Yeah, but she rose to the occasion, and here we are 2.5 days later, and she's read the whole thing, so way to go, Effie. I'm excited. I loved Evan. Did anything in this read of it stick out more than before? Were you like, oh, yep, classic Red Rising? Or because I kind of forgotten how much I loved it.
I forgot how much I loved Severo.
Yeah.
Severo is easily the best character, in my opinion, in this book, and I will, without
the
spoiling
best
anything.
character overall.
I mean, I think so. I don't know if he's the
pretty
best,
up there.
like capital B best character, but I think he's my favorite character.
Titus was pretty. No, just kidding.
I definitely like Severo a lot more than Darrow personally.
Well, Darrow's just so like
Darrow's
woe
great.
with me all the time. He's just on a blood feud.
Yeah, Darrow's the guy. He's the main. He's our main guy.
I like him. I like Darrow. I was surprised by how much I ended up liking him because he was just like so dumb and clueless
in the beginning.
At the beginning.
Yeah.
But like I came to really like him.
Darrow is an interesting protagonist, right? Because he's not fueled by, or at least initially, he's not fueled by like, we need to take over. This is so evil what's being done to us. He's fueled by what's been done to his wife and to fulfill her wishes. It's like all about her, really, not so much like overthrowing the evilness of the society, which he also acknowledges. And so it's like becoming more about that. But really, she's the main motivation. At least that's how it is in my mind.
I think that might be why I was able to like him, because his motivations weren't blind hatred for these oppressors. It was like he was like building this dream that his wife died for. We see a little revenge play out, and everyone learns that it's not that cool when Titus dies.
Yeah, well said. So he's more fueled by like honoring her memory and wanting to fulfill her wishes. Like she's the real rebel here, not him. He's just like, well, I don't want her to die for nothing, so here I am.
But as he kind of progresses up more into the society and becomes a little bit more entrenched into this, I think he starts to realize just how bad the situation really is. And it becomes not just about EO, but it's still very much about EO, but also, the Reds in general too, which I think like Pierce Brown did a really excellent job at kind of like giving the main character the motivation he needed, a depth in motivation, and then expanding outward into like how he could bring like systemic change to this systemic issue,
Him understanding why his wife felt so passionately.
Right. That you just summed it up as usual. You summed it up in like 4 words when I did it like 3
as usual. I'm over here blushing. All right, let's do the summary before we get too deep, because I know we all have a lot to say. It has been 700 years since mankind colonized the solar system. Society has fragmented into a class system, with the powerful having installed a rigid, color-based social hierarchy with the physically enhanced golds at the top, ruling with an iron fist. 16-year-old Darrow is a red, a class of workers who toil beneath the surface of Mars, mining helium-3, a necessary element used for terraforming the planet. He and his wife Io are arrested after entering a forbidden area. While Io is publicly whipped for her crime, she sings a forbidden folk song as a protest against the Reds' enslavement. She is subsequently hanged on the orders of the Mars Archgovernor. Darrow cuts down and buries his wife's body, a crime for which he is also hanged. However, Darrow awakens to find that he has been drugged and delivered into the hands of the Sons of Ares, a group of rebels mainly constructed of the bottom-ranked classes, who fight against the oppression of the low colors. Ares have adopted the video of Io's song and execution as a rallying vehicle for their cause. Darrow is given the chance to infiltrate the society to bring it down from within. He is physically transformed by Mickey, a violet carver, who gives him the abilities and appearance of a gold. Using a fabricated identity, Darrow is accepted into the Gold's Elite Institute, where he befriends Cassius Bologna. Darrow is selected for House Mars by Fitchner. To continue to the next stage, Darrow must complete the passage, a test in which the 100 newly chosen students in each of the 12 houses are paired with another house member and tasked to kill each other, as means to eliminate the weaker half. Darrow is forced to murder Cassius's brother Julian to survive, but Cassius can only guess who killed him. Each house is assigned a fortress and a scepter, called a standard, to defend within the Institute's confines, with the goal of warring with each other until one house enslaves the others with the standard. Mars fractures into factions, one led jointly by Darrow and Cassius, one by Antonia, and one by Titus Ladros, and the antisocial Severo going off on his own. To neutralize the violent Titus, who has been sexually assaulting the female slaves left in Mars's fortress, Darrow manipulates House Minerva, led by the young woman he met briefly upon his arrival at the Institute, and whom he has dubbed Mustang. Mustang and her troops take the Mars fortress and imprison Titus. Severo helps Darrow escape and capture Minerva's standard, which he trades to reclaim Mars's castle. Darrow takes over as the Primus, which is the leader of Mars, and Severo and his group of Howlers declare their loyalty to him. Darrow realizes from the captive Titus's manner of speech that he is also a fellow Red impersonating a gold. To maintain his cover, Darrow captures Minerva's fortress and defeats their strongman Pax Au Telemanas. Mustang reveals the existence of the Jackal, the leader of House Pluto, who is terrorizing other houses. Antonia and some of Titus's former followers attempt to overthrow Darrow, but he manages to thwart their plan. Lilith, a messenger from the Jackal, secretly reveals to Cassius that Darrow killed Julian. Cassius challenges Darrow to a duel outside Mars's fortress, wounding him and leaving him to die. Darrow is rescued and nursed back to health by Mustang. A hint of romance begins to build as they flee to avoid discovery by Cassius, now Primus of House Mars. Conquered students are systematically enslaved by other houses, forced by their honor to serve their conquerors. Darrow and Mustang begin to amass an army by recruiting many Oathbreakers, the wandering slaves who have chosen to disobey orders. Darrow prefers that his captured foes swear their allegiance and join him, rather than serve him. Learning from his previous mistakes, he frees these slaves and takes responsibility for their actions to gain their allegiance. He gains the loyalty of the duplicitous Tactus Aurath when he accepts physical punishment on himself after administering the same to Tactus for unruly behavior. Severo, who has led his team of Howlers to escape from Cassius and has now lost an eye, meets up with Darrow again to join forces. Darrow takes the fortresses of House Ceres, Apollo, and Jupiter, enslaving their members until the prisoners prove their loyalty to him. Fitchner reveals to Darrow that the other proctors have been conspiring to assist the Jackal, who is actually Adrius, son of Archgovernor Augustus. Darrow exposes a prisoner, taken during the surrender of House Jupiter, as the Jackal, after impaling his hand and offering him the opportunity to free himself by cutting it off. The Jackal slices off his own hand to escape, and uses Darrow's shock as an opening, attacking him and killing Pax in the attempt, then escaping with the illegal assistance of Proctor Apollo. Enraged by the Proctor's deliberate efforts to hinder his victory, Darrow slays Proctor Apollo. Seeing the opportunity now before him, Darrow and his army storms Mount Olympus, the floating palace of the Proctors, using the flying boots gained from Proctor Apollo. With the remaining Proctors subdued with the help of Severo and the Howlers, Darrow sends Mustang to capture the Jackal, only to find out from Fitchner that she is Virginia Au Augustus, the Jackal's twin sister. Darrow expects a betrayal, but she returns to deliver her captive brother, and Darrow wins the exercise. Before he departs, Cassius promises he will get his revenge should their paths ever cross again. With his victory, Darrow is given his choice of a patron to sponsor his future. He accepts the hated Archgovernor Augustus's offer to serve as one of his lancers, knowing that the powerful man will offer him the greatest opportunities to acquire the power he needs to destroy the Golds and overthrow the corrupt class system, enslaving the Reds and other low colors. What a book. Man, when I first got to the school system, because I remember there was like a school trope happening here, and then I remember that it's the best of all school tropes, where it's just a bunch of students are given fortresses and like find little hidden caches of weapons, and then are just gonna beat each other senseless in this like fantasy setting with swords and stuff. I was just so excited because, as we all know, my memory leaves a lot to be desired, and so I didn't really remember the exact minute by minute of this book. And so when I remembered that as reading it, I was like, oh yes, this book is so awesome. Effie, what did you think? Were you surprised that was the school?
Yeah, I was surprised by a lot of what was going on. I wasn't expecting them to like go to war. I feel like Pierce Brown, like he wrote this book that kind of pulls from a lot of different tropes and storylines, and
You can say Hunger Games. It's okay.
well, it's not. I mean, it is. It is Hunger Games.
On other fantasy book you've written.
Definitely, but there's also like Harry Potter. They're sorted into houses, and I was actually just thinking about it. The big reveal that like he was a slave living underground, and that it was actually already terraformed, and all this shit's going on, and it's like way crazier than he could have ever imagined, than EO could have ever imagined. Kind of reminded me of like The Matrix. There's that conversation in The Matrix where that one guy is trying to sell everyone out because he's like, I don't care if this steak isn't real. Like, I just want to eat the steak. Like,
right. Ignorance is bliss sort of thing. You nerd, Evan Cyrus.
How would you forget?
I heard you.
Go ahead.
I can't remember when, but like Darrow at some point kind of early on when he's like going through this transformation, he's just like, actually, I think I'll just go back. I'll go back in the mine. I'll go sing with my family. Like, I don't care. I feel like he pulled from like a lot of different things, and like obviously like the Roman gods and stuff. Like he pulled from all these different things, but I felt like it still added up to something new. I felt like it was something new when I was reading.
Especially because of how, I mean, there's certainly like a real edge to all of this. I mean, I don't really feel like Darrow's in a, like the idea that Darrow is in this space where he could be found out at any moment. It's kind of like an undercover cop kind of situation, like almost at any time. If he slips up, they're not just going to kill him. They're going to make an example out of him. Like if he thought what they did to EO was bad, nobody has ever, I mean, people have been infiltrating them, apparently like 90 of them, but they haven't found anybody publicly that's done this, and they would certainly make an example out of him.
And his family, I would imagine.
And his entire family, probably a lot of the Reds, anybody he's even
wasn't it spelled out to him? Like
by Dancer.
Yeah, he was like, everyone you've ever known will be like skinned alive or something crazy.
Yeah, really bad. So the stakes
a lot
are
is on
really
the line
high here. Yeah, absolutely. Effie, what did you think about Darrow siding with Augustus so quickly at the end of this book?
I'm still torn about that. I still don't know fully how I feel about it. I thought from the beginning during their like drafting or when they were sorting them into houses, I thought because he mentioned that one knight guy, what's his name? Lorne. Yeah, they mentioned him, and so I thought that meant that like because he was mentioned as like this really influential, like third most powerful guy who's like in control of all of like the armies or something.
He was an opposing faction from Archgovernor Augustus, right?
Well, he's not part of the Bolognas. He is kind of like a famous knight.
He's like a third thing.
Like, yeah. Lorne definitely kind of makes sense, and I think he even considers Lorne.
I was like, oh, they brought him up, and he seems like the guy because like the whole deal is to like get in charge of an army and like use it against them. And so I thought that that's the way he was going to go. But then there was the whole little spat with Cassius, the little bitch. And like, he was like, I'm going to kill you the next time I see you. And so I thought that was cool that, you know, he's like, well, since we're already rivals, bet. But like, then, but then at the same time, like, why go for like the third most powerful guy when you can go to like the first most powerful guy? Like Augustus is like the top of everybody, right? Like he, besides like the lady on the moon. On the one hand, yeah, maybe he would have gotten along better with Lorne, you know, like they would have maybe like been buds. But I think the riskier but ultimately more rewarding choice might be siding with Augustus. So I don't know.
Not to mention that I mean Augustus is kind of a not really a rising star, but I think that the Golds see that he has more potential, and he like the whole hierarchy, like their place at the top of the hierarchy really revolves around not just power but potential for power and their ability to keep it too. And so Lorne is definitely like, yes, he's a very capable
he's an established power.
Yeah, exactly, but his star is kind of fading, you know. I mean, like he's been around for a long time. He's still promising in his way, but not quite the same way that Augustus is.
There's the additional factor of the Archgovernor's, what's the word I'm looking for? His messing with the rules of the game, right? He was very much breaking the rules, which is illegal in their society, in order to elevate his own son and get him to win. And so if Darrow decides to not go with him, then he's kind of gonna have to spill the beans about that whole situation, or at least not like cover it up. And now he's got this enemy that's really powerful. Even if it does defeat that enemy, now there's like this power hole, this gap that needs to be filled. It's like, I think he made the right move in that, yes, he could have taken down one player right then, potentially, but he also could have potentially made himself an enemy that he's going to have to deal with that could hinder his growth, and also just start a whole bunch of inner turmoil and conflict within the Golds hierarchy themselves by having this like potential power gap, a hole that needs to be filled. And he's like, no, I need to be as fast, meteoric as possible in my own rise to power. So I think he did a really wise thing. Also gained some points because the Archgovernor knew that he had that against him and decided to not do that and side with him. So I think
now he can leverage
it well
too. He's got one on the top guy.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So, you know, I think that he made the right move, but I think it's a indication of the wisdom and foresight that Darrow has, right? And that like that would be so hard to do. Like it was specifically the Archgovernor who killed his wife.
But I mean, you got to go to the highest part. I mean, because it's not like he can join House Bologna, right? I mean, Cassius and him have a
definitely going to be in the
that
same
would have been
room.
so funny.
That would have been like I thought about that on this reread. You know, I thought like, wouldn't it be crazy if he joined House? Because Bologna wouldn't immediately say no to him either,
right?
It's like him joining Bologna, like it would. I mean, one son is already dead, right? So I mean, there is a little bit of a gap to fill there, but then Cassius
so
is
risky,
in the mix.
though.
It would have been very
Bologna is going to be. I'll be watching my back so much if I was Darrow.
Yeah, she wants to eat Darrow's heart.
Yeah,
you know?
dude.
It's bad. It's very, very bad, and it's so, you know, like that part where Darrow kills. What was Lucian? What was Cassius's brother's name?
Julian.
That part where Cassius kills Julian, it's such a tell. Like it shows so much about how privileged this class really is, because Julian was just like, come on, man, like I got so much at stake here, like my dad's watching me, you know, like
but my dad would be so ashamed,
right? Exactly. Just like let me kill you, man, come on, I want it. He reminds me of like Paul Rudd in Parks and Rec when he's running for office, and he's just just like, come on, give me it. Give me it.
Give me it. Come on.
It. Just come on, give me it.
It's so spoiled.
I feel bad.
Yeah.
But it shows so much about like how this society operates, like they're just as pampered as can be, except but there's a funny thing there too, because Augustus is kind of one of the things he kind of rails against is decadence. Allegedly, this just for the pixies, like
right.
we peerless scarred do not
the peerless scarred. Speaking of that, Effie, why do you think they force these kids to go through this school? Why do you think the society has set up the school this way? Just in general.
I think the reasoning they gave was that the society has like 3 stages, and there's like the savagery and the ascendance and then the decadence. And he was like shitting on the decadence. He was basically saying that these people, these golds, these kids were like born into the ascendance, but like in order to understand it and like understand that power and also like wield it, they have to like go through the process of ascending. So they have to go through the savagery to understand and use the power of ascendance was my understanding.
And that's why they beat Darrow up so hard when they initially kind of like, remember that scene where they like kind of rip him out of bed and he thinks like, oh no, they found me out, like this is it, this is when, but they were actually wearing gold bracelets and he knew that they weren't going to kill him, but they had to just like beat him up so much to kind of, because like a lot of these kids, they've just been pampered their whole lives, even if they're not quote unquote pixies, they still have led lives of such privilege and such decadence already that they need to go through this process to become the peerless scarred that keep them at the top of this pyramid.
Which is pretty wise, right? Have you guys heard the like saying from shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves in 3 generations?
I don't think so.
No.
It's this idea that this society wisely recognized and is getting ahead of. It's like the first, it's like from shirt sleeves, I guess means like poor, kind of, I guess from like bottom rank poor to poor in 3 generations. And how it goes is the first generation is born into like a lifestyle of like hardship, determined to have a better future, and they're willing to work hard, make the sacrifices necessary in order to achieve their goals. And in time, the efforts pay off, they become rich, and then they enjoy the fruits of their labor. And then their children, the second generation, grow up witness to the parents' struggle and understand the importance of the hard work. Right. And although they live like a more comfortable lifestyle, they still remember the childhood filled with frugality. And because of that awareness, they have like sound educational and financial choices that they make. And it kind of helps them build upon the foundation of their parents that parents work so hard to achieve. And then the third generation has no memory of want or struggle. And they only know a life of plenty and often kind of like seem to lack an understanding and appreciation for the work that went into building the lifestyle they now enjoy. So that third generation is known to squander the wealth their parents and grandparents worked so hard to build, and thus eventually we're back to shirt sleeves, right? So it's like this cycle, and I think that this society is trying to show the hardship of growth and the savagery of humanity's like true nature or whatever to each generation, and kind of prevent this shirt sleeve to shirt sleeve, because they don't want anyone changing classes. They want them always to be at the top.
Damn. I've never heard that quote before, but that's like perfect.
Yeah. I'm glad I thought of it, because it's. I did not make that up. That is a thing for sure.
For sure. I've heard like kind of arguments against that in the sense that yes, if all variables are consistent, then that cycle will continue in
obviously
perpetuity.
That's a general statement. Not
I'm not
everybody's.
I'm not saying that you are abiding by that, but it's an interesting concept because and even with this series too, I mean, like, I wonder if the Golds would recognize that cycle would happen inevitably if variables around it didn't change. Like if they weren't flexible with certain things, like advancements in technology and, just changes happen. Right. And I wonder like how flexible and ready for change a society or a class like the Golds are, or if they kind of advocate against change to keep up a certain status quo, to keep up a certain system. I don't know.
Yeah, I would think they would go against change.
Yeah, I wonder, because like the society in this series is hundreds and hundreds of years in the future, and technology has gotten to an absolutely ridiculous place, but it'll never stop progressing. Like the society in itself will never stop progressing. And then like look at Darrow. Like he's a variable that they
I would say
doesn't
controlled
seem-
change they would be behind, but
maybe
uncontrolled
it's
change,
authoritarian
no.
for sure.
Well, no,
Yeah.
Chad is right though, because they showed that in the school by favoring the jackal and setting it up so that he was a shoo-in to win, even though it's supposed to be like this meritocracy where they're like the best man wins, except if you're the son of the arch-governor, then you win. And so it's like it is like clearly against their nature to go with any kind of change
that disrupts their power. No one wants
that
to lose
disrupts the
power.
power.
But it's hugely hypocritical too.
Oh,
because
for sure.
Right, yeah, and it's so funny, because like I'm sure even Darrow would be. If I was Darrow in this position, I'd be like, man, these people are all so full of shit. Like they really don't abide by any of the things that they really believe in. I mean, they abide by it just enough to keep themselves at the top here,
Right.
But it's like that saying about like in the Song of Ice and Fire, like Stannis Baratheon, he's so rigid that he'll break if he's bent too far, and like that's what that's
good.
Yeah,
fucking
like,
Stannis.
Stannis. Yeah.
Fucking Stannis.
Well, it's funny though, because like at the end when Augustus and Darrow have a really interesting conversation with each other. He's like lauding Darrow at one point, saying like, "You are a man that people follow. Like I don't really care that I don't care that you come from humble backgrounds. People follow you, and that's rare, and that's awesome." But then at the same time, like this is coming from the mouth of the same guy who tried so hard, like manipulating the game to make his own son win. It's like he's like, I respect a man who can lead, but also will, like totally manipulate and pay my way for my son to be that man when in doubt. Like, come on, man, you vapid piece. Like,
Effie, how did you feel about Darrow allowing Cassius to kill Titus after Darrow learned that Titus was a red?
Yeah. That was a really crazy part of the book.
Yeah, it was. Absolutely.
I think that specific part, like the series of events of them like capturing Titus, him discovering that he was a red through him slipping up and using words that only reds would use. In his head, it was like this panic. He's like, holy shit, this guy's a red and he's like a shitty one. Like he's one that like is just going to ruin, he's going to make my job harder, and he's not the one that we need to like lead this insurrection. So it was like he basically, I feel like, kind of had already made up his mind that Titus had to die in that moment. And because Darrow is like kind of shitty and led Cassius to believe that Titus killed he was like, oh, it's like I felt like it was like kind of perfect for him. He was like, oh, like I can get rid of two problems. Cassius will feel like he avenged his brother. That mess is over. This Titus guy who's like a rabid dog, he's putting down these two problems that were in his way. And then after that, he'll be cool. And then I feel like as soon as Cassius killed Titus, he like immediately realized like, oh, that was shitty. Like,
well,
like,
it was shitty because he let Cassius do it.
Because he let Cassius, it was shitty for like a bunch of reasons. He like learned, I feel like he aged like 10 years in that moment. Like he was like, he came out of that moment a man, because he was like, oh my God. He learned that when you're just fighting for revenge, it doesn't help anyone but like you.
And it's different than justice.
He was like, yeah, B, he was like, that's not justice. And C, he was like, now no one respects me.
Right.
Like no
because he should have done it.
Like Eddard Stark.
Yeah.
You know? Like how he was the one who passed the sentence?
He who passes the sentence.
He who passes the sentence.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like I thought that was a really cool, necessary moment. The reader and Darrow all like learned a lot together, and I feel like it also kind of like humbled him a lot. I feel like that was the coming of age moment. Was Titus dying, being murdered by Cassius?
It really was. Yeah, it's funny that. Do you think Cassius realized that at all? Because he seemed kind of blind to it and be like, "Thanks, man!" Like high five. Like I needed that because he was the one. No. He thought that Titus was the one who killed Julian.
Yeah, Cassius doesn't know anything.
Yeah, Cassius is like not. Cassius is like
sucks.
All the other gold kids. This is all superficial to them. None of this school, none of the lessons they're learning, none of it is like as deep as Darrow and his motivations.
Which is one of the reasons I think that towards the end of this book, there are a lot of kind of higher ups in the society that really respect Darrow. this is a complicated society. Like, and I think that Pierce Brown was very smart in making it complicated and multi-tiered. Like, I'm talking about the golds specifically, but having some of these golds really, some of them really do believe in some of the tenets of their class. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
and so seeing Darrow take it as seriously as he did and learn specific lessons from this whole process. In their minds, they're like, now there's a gory damn gold right there. Like that's a real gold right there. Oh, he stormed Olympus. Like, yeah, that's a gold who will do what it takes. Like this
Totally.
is to a lot of them. But then there's also some golds that are like, oh, this is a fly in the punch bowl. Like, this is not good.
He represents a change that could happen upon them, right? Like, he could disrupt their own
potential
hierarchy of power. Yeah,
and I think that's why Augustus was like so quick to offer him the position, because it was like, keep him close. Like,
right.
Like we gotta tamp this down and make sure we can control it.
Or if he is going to be out of control, have it be for our own design and through our own design and for our own benefit. Because Augustus probably wants to be the sovereign. Like these people will climb as high as they possibly can. Having a rivalry with Bologna doesn't make things fun. Doesn't make things nice and neat.
No,
This is a blood feud that's only going to get worse. And having someone like Darrow, he's kind of a wild card, probably.
Yeah. But not only that, he's a wild card that is armed with information that could personally take down House Augustus. So he's like, man, there's so many reasons that I need to take this guy under my wing. I
hadn't really considered that even on this reread that Darrow had that knowledge of what Augustus had done.
You got to keep your enemies closer.
Yeah. Friends close, enemies closer, sort of thing. I think it would be useful for me to review the color hierarchies real quick, so everyone who has not read these books, and just for us, we can kind of be reminded of them all, so we can understand the society a little bit. So I'm just going to do that real quick. So we've got 3 different groups of colors: the high colors, the mid colors, and the low colors. I'm going to start at the top here. We've got the high colors, which is the golds. They are the rulers of the society. We have silvers, which are the financiers and the businessmen. We have the whites, which are clergy and judges. The coppers, which are administrators, lawyers, and bureaucrats. In the mid colors, we have the blues, bridge crew of starships and pilots. Yellows, doctors and researchers. Greens, programmers and technicians. Violets, artisans and other creatives. Oranges, mechanics and engineers. Grays, regular soldiers and police. And then making up the low colors. And then making up the low colors, we have browns, which are servants, cooks, janitors. Obsidians, elite soldiers and bodyguards. Pinks, pleasure slaves and social functionaries, and then reds at the bottom of the bottom. We have the manual laborers and miners.
So I'm kind of curious. I haven't read this series in a few years, so maybe this has been communicated to us, the reader, but I might have missed it, or maybe it's just not super clear. But is everybody, like the hundreds of millions of people that are in this society, like is everybody assigned a color?
I think so.
Okay, so...
Yeah.
Would most people be reds and browns, do you think?
Because
like most people, even in like our society, most people are laborers, like, I mean,
yeah, but I think like blues, like bridge crew of starships, like they're like the
but they're like in
and
the military, like that's like a whole.
Yeah,
they're not like commercial pilots and stuff. Maybe they are.
Is there even such a thing as commercial pilots in this, or is everything?
See, that's the thing. That's the thing that I was kind of curious about. It's like this. The society is a lot more complicated than like 10 colors. You know what I mean? Like there's so many different jobs that would have to.
And then there's the hierarchies within the hierarchy.
Totally, yeah. There's different kinds of reds.
High reds and low reds.
So what I'm wondering is like, would every single person in this society be given a color, and then has it said anything yet about how you can progress from one color to another, or are you?
I don't think that you can.
Yeah, you just set in your
They like
I
that's
think
what's
this is
so
a
funny.
caste system.
Yeah, literally, because in his speech, Augustus's speech to the gold students, like before the draft, he's saying like we're not born equal. Yeah. Like, this is not a society of equals. Clearly, we're way better than everyone else.
Since we genetically engineered ourselves.
Yeah.
Right, yeah. We are better. Yeah.
We are literally better. Yeah. But, like, also, he goes on to say, like reds can't be doctors. And, like, greens can't, like, he, like, made a point to say that people from one color can't do the
Totally.
job of another color. So it sounded like everyone's given a color and you dye that color.
And I think that this is a pretty, and I think both of you would probably agree with me, but I think that this is Pierce Brown's like very much on the nose kind of send up of the kind of like high class, like top 1% of a society like ours, kind of like championing a certain meritocracy while also not really believing in it or
you being a part of it.
Yeah, we're being a part of it at all. You know, like they're it's like, all the great work you Reds are doing down there. Like, yes, just keep working and you'll get this
you guys
laurel.
are doing great.
You're doing such a good job. But like, meanwhile, they're just like in squalor and poverty, and then they're all just like, they're never gonna progress up to here. Those
Right.
idiots.
Like their society is very much set up in order to keep them at the top, not because they think that's the best way to run it. Right. At least it seems that way to me.
I think that they do think it's the best way to run it. Like I think that
they
it's been because it's
believe
working
that.
for
Keeps them in power.
Yeah, it's working for them. I mean, it's the best way for it to run to their benefit. But
Right.
they're not. There's not an altruistic bone in any of these people's bodies.
No.
Like they don't
If
want
they
to
did,
see.
it was removed.
Yeah, they don't want to see. They would want to see society progress only far enough to suit their benefit. You know,
Yeah.
and anything past that would probably, in their minds, only be a detriment to their lifestyle and the amount of power that they have.
Because they're so like against change and they're so set on golds always being at the top. Like, I wonder what they would do if they realized that these violets, these carvers, had the ability to literally turn someone into a gold to the point where they can't even recognize that they're not one.
I think that the golds don't actually, if they found out that it was a possibility, wouldn't think it was an actual threat because
Yes.
of how far along and how advanced and how authoritarian their class really is, and
They're hubris.
how much of an iron fist they really have. Yeah, they're hubris. You know,
But wouldn't it go against the whole thing about like the colors and the hierarchy and
of course.
how they are better? And so like,
they would nip it in the bud, but they wouldn't be worried about it.
Right.
Like, you know
well,
what I
why
mean?
would they nip it in the bud then? Like if they
Because-
weren't worried.
As a show of force to set an example, you know,
Yeah, and
like,
to make sure no one else gets that idea into
they
their
would
head.
probably with their own hubris in mind, they would probably look at it as an opportunity to make an example of somebody. Like, I don't know if like the ruling, I mean, maybe some of the ruling golds are legitimately worried about the Sons of Ares, but I don't think that they're like shaken in their boots at the thought of like carvers being they think they're gods.
They actually think the other
Yeah.
classes are lesser and belong in their station, but I do not think would hesitate to remind the whole rest
Totally.
of a class and make an example out of somebody that is where you belong.
I wonder though, like if I keep going back to that speech, but like it said so much about
Yeah,
the
of
motives
course.
of the golds and stuff and Augustus and everything and how he kept going on about how soft these gold kids were because they were born into this like this higher class and they're like, you've been spoiled. These lower colors, the reds, they're born with scars and calluses. Like they're hard. You guys don't know hardness like these kids do down in the planet. Following that logic with the way that Darrow was able to become a gold in a way that other golds couldn't even recognize the difference. And then he goes on to do something in the school that had never been done before. He takes Olympus. No one had ever thought to do that because he's a red and he doesn't think like these kids. And he immediately like ascends to power among these kids. It's like, I feel like if they were actually as smart as they claim to be, someone would actually see the merit of that. Like that's evolution. Like what, like I think Dancer or someone even said that they were asking what that was about Darrow and how he was able to solve this puzzle and do these things so quickly. And he was like, that's evolution.
I don't think you're wrong about any of these notices that you have, but I think it's more akin to kind of like Voldemort's Death Eaters and their opinion of Muggleborns. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
like it's
Yeah,
like
yeah,
Just
that's a good
Nazis.
example, actually.
yeah,
Just Nazis.
We're keeping this in the fantasy realm.
Trying to be more fun, but yeah, sure.
But what I'm saying though is it's like Hermione is one of the best witches of her age, right? And Neville can
Yeah.
hardly stand a cauldron the right way up, but that doesn't
Right.
matter. Like they like 1,000 Hermione's doesn't equal one Neville. Doesn't matter how bad Neville is. It
Damn.
doesn't matter. None of that
Right.
matters. It all like so. I everything you're saying is correct, but I think that the Golds are they literally think they're gods. You know, like they are modeled after the Romans, like they're modeled after Roman.
But that's their problem.
Oh,
Because
absolutely.
that's
no, it's going
why
to be their
Darrow-
undoing. Yeah,
That's
Yeah.
why Daryl was able to take Olympus.
Totally.
That's exactly what
Is
Evan
because
said.
they're
Yeah.
like, I'm a god. Like, what can these kids do? And he's like, I'm gonna fuck you up.
Yeah, exactly.
Right now.
Exactly.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
that's part of, you know, Dancer has this figured out too, you know, and he's like, we can't just serial bomb coffee shops and stuff. We can't just, it's not going to work. Like, it's
That
not
does make everyone
what we-
hate us.
What we have to do is understand any weaknesses that they might have, and that's why they send Darrow in undercover like this. You know, like we have to learn how these people think. We have to learn how they live. We have to learn not only what they think of us, but how they think of themselves too, and
Right.
exploit any weaknesses that they have. It's the only way it's going to work. There's no other way, because the Golds have such a hold on this society. But
Right.
they are not gods. They're definitely not.
They're
They
not,
look
though
like
they do a good job of even covering for the weaknesses, right? By like having the kids go through this school. Like that's a pretty cool way of like scarring them and showing them like what hunger is like, and like kind of de-pamperizing them and toughening them up a little bit, and not only
Totally.
making them be a ruler, but one who earns it, or at least in their mind.
They
Yeah.
learn to appreciate their status, and
Yeah.
and so that way they're willing to fight that much harder against the lower colors who might try to overthrow them or whatever. 'Cause they know what
And-
it's like.
And maybe even know their place within the hierarchies within the gold, right? Because there's
yeah,
hierarchy
yeah.
within the gold, each color itself, right? And they might kind of know that like the cream rises to the crop, and maybe you will only ever be the leader of a battleship and not the leader of a planet, you know?
Effie, I have a question for you again. Why do you think Cassius didn't kill Darrow? Because he had an opportunity to. He kind of like left him there, still alive. Like, what do you think that was all about?
So, first of all, I think Cassius, and I've said it already, is a little bitch. And I think I was talking to you about it. His relationship with Darrow reminds me a lot of the relationship between like those two main characters in Count of Monte Cristo.
Dantes and Mondego?
Yeah, I'll never remember those guys' names, but like that their relationship right away reminded me of those guys.
And Count of Monte Cristo was one of the books that Darrow read too.
Oh yeah. And so, but right away, like when Cassius was like getting like buddy with Darrow, and like they seemed to really start to trust each other, I was like, this guy is gonna betray Darrow so hard. Like, and
I shouldn't have shown you Count of Monte Cristo.
yeah, it gave it away, because it's like, because at the end of the day, he's a gold. Like, he's a fucking gold, and so he thinks like one, and he acts like that.
He's a Bologna too. He's
Yeah,
not
he's a
just
Bologna.
gold,
He's
a
so
Bologna.
entitled. And
Yeah.
so the only reason why I think Cassius didn't just like literally kill Darrow, like make sure he was super dead, I think it was because golds are entitled and like shitty, but they're also all really smart. And he knows deep down that Darrow might have like killed Julian, but really the school did.
So you think it was like a mercy thing?
Not a mercy, but more like a twinge of guilt or shame.
Couldn't bring himself to do it. I agree with you. At the end of the day, I don't think that it was
I
really
don't know if I do or not.
in the forefront of his mind. I don't think
I
it
don't know
was
if I
conscious
believe
necessarily.
that either. Like, as I say it.
Well, like it depends on whether or not you think. I mean, it's a cool idea for sure. I mean, it depends on whether or not you think Cassius thought Darrow would die of his wounds.
Maybe, maybe he thought he would die. Maybe he thought it was like a really slow, painful, shitty way to die, and he would rather him.
That's
like,
what he told himself, I
suffer.
think.
Yeah,
Maybe.
and I think that to your point, comparing it to Dantes and Mondego's relationship, I think maybe Cassius thought it would be beneath him to like kill somebody from.
Oh,
that,
right.
like,
Better
it'd be-
just rot.
Yeah, I mean, like, why give somebody from that low of a family that quick of a death, especially after he killed someone in your family? You know.
Yeah, like even if he did survive that, he's like, as of now, I never have to worry about you. Like
Yeah, but he
you're
does.
no longer. Yeah,
Right.
he doesn't know that because
But
he
he
is
does,
still
yeah.
a gold. So,
Totally.
but like he maybe that's what he thought was like kind of like in Count of Monte Cristo when he turned him in. He was like, yeah, now I never have to worry about you again.
Yeah, I think personally that it was cowardice at the ultimate
Yeah.
reason, because like what he told himself was, I'm gonna let this person suffer, ah, ha ha, I've won. But really inside, I think he knows, like you said, I think he knows in his heart of hearts that he would have done the exact same thing if he was in Darrow's
Right.
position, and
Yeah.
he was brothers with him, they were friends, and he just like he was too much of a coward to end it and look into his eyes while he betrayed his
Yeah.
friend.
Effie made a really good point here too, because I mean, like these people, like the Golds. Pierce Brown was very careful about this because the Golds are not stupid. Like they haven't gotten so high up in society that they're not educated and they're just like laying in chairs and like being fed by robots and stuff. Like that's not what they are, you know? Like,
and they recognize that would destroy them.
So that leaves a lot of space for the reader to not feel safe around these people. It makes them that much more formidable.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Well said.
There was a lot of times where like Darrow kind of underestimated these kids because like he was just seeing these like brutish dudes,
Pampered.
and he just took them as like blunt objects, but really they were onto his plans more often than not. Like they kind of knew what he was up to because they're not idiots.
So let's talk a little bit about Mustang. I want to hear both of yours opinion about their little romance that they get going on. What'd you think about that? And then also, she's, if anything, she's like a unique Gold, right? Because she kind of understands the system and almost fights against it. I mean, her not betraying Darrow at the end is kind of an example of like loyalty over crushing your enemy for any reason, right? And rising to the top. Tell me what you guys think about her. Effie, we'll start with you, and then Evan.
I really liked Mustang. I think in a weird way that Pierce Brown I think he kind of replaced EO with her for a Gold, for the daughter, as we find out, the daughter of like Augustus.
The worst.
For someone that high up to be that tapped in, part of me was like,
It's a little unbelievable.
like
okay.
you know, like up until then, all the Golds like all made sense, but she wasn't just like sympathetic. She was like kind of already on Darrow's level in some ways.
Right. Even knew the song.
Yeah, and so to me, I was like, well, I don't know, but like I liked her in the same way that I liked EO because you know she's a cool, smart person who like kind of can call out the bullshit of all these like idiots running around trying to rule the world.
Did you think she was going to betray Darrow?
No, I never really worried about that.
Even at the end there? When she learned she was the son? I did. I was totally blown away. I totally forgot. Evan, what did you think? Do you think she was going to betray him?
No, not really. Like, I didn't really get that vibe. I mean, I'm kind of with Effie here where...
Oh, I totally did.
That's okay.
I was like, no!
Why did you think she was going to betray him?
Because
Golds be
stirred
Golds.
things up. Yeah.
Yeah.
But even though
and,
she knew the lyrics to the song...
yeah, but that was just a happenstance. She knew, like, she didn't actually know the lyrics. She just knew she was humming it.
Like, we have to remember too that EO's death is basically a viral video at this point.
Right,
So,
right.
like everybody's seen
but
it.
like
is it in the
she didn't
Golds
just
too?
watch it. She like took it in. She like understood what was going on.
So my theory with Mustang is that kind of like to Effie's point earlier, and the point we've been kind of circling around, the idea that these Golds are very smart. You know, I think that Augustus specifically is maybe a bit extra. You know, like he's a very intense person, and I think that growing up under the thumb of somebody like that, typically people tend to rebel and look for ways out from under that thumb and look for like wholly different ways of thinking. Not all the time, but it definitely happens. So I think that would kind of explain a lot of her mindset and a lot of her more kind of like openness to maybe not being all the way open. Like if she found out Darrow was a red, like right there, I don't know that she's chill enough like right now.
Yeah.
So, like it would probably be bad, but I think that the Golds, kind of like how there are separate hierarchies within the Golds, I bet there are separate philosophies within the Golds as well, depending on the way that certain goals were brought up, you know, certain trauma that they've been through because of the society that's been set up. There's a certain like natural progressivism in ideas when you are living under an authoritarian regime like this, which is bound to rear its ugly head, which is trying to be squashed all the time. And I think that having a father like Augustus kind of would involuntarily bring about that kind of philosophy. So I think that's why Mustang is the way that she is.
Well, I had
Yeah.
a question about that. Like, I was wondering why Augustus didn't try to show the same favoritism towards Mustang that he did towards the Jackal, his son.
I think he has more confidence in Mustang.
Like a patriarchal thing?
Wait,
I
what
don't
do you
know.
mean he has more confidence?
I think Adrius is not the same kind of like warrior as Mustang is. Like
So
Adrius
then-
hasn't proven himself as much as Mustang has. So he felt
Exactly.
like-
So it's
But-
like, why would he favor the kid
Yeah.
and like try to rig it so that the kid who is like less capable would win?
because
why wouldn't
one
he
of them-
favor
Yeah,
the most
he'd want to make the
capable?
one who's more capable win, I would think. I'm with you, Effie.
Yeah.
Well,
That
he'd
seems
want
weird
to
me.
he'd want to give more resources to the less capable one, so both of his kids could come out as high
But
as
that's
possible.
not what he was like. Literally, like the Proctor said, they rigged it so that the Jackal will win. They never
Yeah, he
said
wasn't just, like,
anything about
giving her
That's
a
virginity.
true.
med pack
You're
from time
right.
to
You're
time,
right.
you
Yeah,
know?
you're totally right. I don't know. Yeah,
So
I think
then it makes
I think
me
it's
wonder-
a patriarchal thing, maybe.
Well,
That could
so
be
it
it too,
Could
yeah.
be it, but the sovereign person
Is a woman, right?
Is a woman. So it's like I think it's like maybe there's something about their relationship
He knows
that
her soft
has
side.
him favoring his son, and that's also something about that relationship might also be why she is of a different like philosophy.
Not to
than
mention,
Yeah.
didn't one of the Augustus kids get killed prior to all of this as well?
by the Bolognas or whatever.
Yeah, and he was like the star child before.
I
so
think
like,
that was-
and that's why he hid them away. He hid those.
Yeah.
He hid them, the two of them away.
so that's a big deal too, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Which
So
kid?
maybe I can't
The
remember his
oldest.
name. It was the eldest of the Augustus. There were like 3 kids of Nero initially, and then before all this, the Bolognas had killed Adrius and Mustang's brother, but I can't remember his name.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But it was like a really big deal. Like it's part of the whole blood feud with the Bolognas and everything.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
But maybe it's like Augustus wanting to prop up his only remaining son.
Maybe.
That could be it.
I think Effie was close to the right answer, kind of flirting around it with there's something to do with their relationship. I think he's seen something inside of her that she has this compassion that he does not think that a leader should have. And so he's
Yeah.
like, you know what? I'm not even gonna she's smart and very capable. In fact, he's probably a little scared of that even. So he's like,
Yeah.
I'm gonna raise up my son because I know that he has the values that I value that would
Yeah.
elevate himself to be a good leader. And so like, who knows what he thinks about her. But
That's
yeah, I think
kinda
it's
the
relationship
vibe I
based. Something
got.
about that.
And to go back to your question, the reason why I never suspected Mustang to betray Darrow was because of the way that he found her in Olympus. He comes upon her room and it's like all fucked up and she's asleep on the ground. And like clearly like there was a struggle and they had to sedate her. But like while she was in Olympus being held by these proctors, they're all golds. They're all like on the same side at the end of the day. And they kidnapped her to try and like hurt Darrow. And she didn't give him away. She didn't like, she wasn't
yeah.
just like, oh yeah, that guy, here's a way you can like take him down or whatever. Like she didn't say shit when she absolutely could have. And there was like no reason why she shouldn't unless she literally was like loyal to Darrow and his cause.
Totally. Yeah,
And
no,
so I
you're
was
right.
like, oh yeah, no. Like even when they like set it up and he was like devastated and goes on this tear to try and like set up this war, I was like, this is silly. Like she's not going to do that.
Do you think that Io would, if she could see everything that Darrow has done from the moment Io died to the end of this book, do you think that she would feel like Darrow is fulfilling, or at least beginning to fulfill the dream that she had? Would she approve of the way that he's acted? What do you think about that?
I think yes. I think that she would be pretty stoked with the way that he's going about doing it. I think that she'd be very much more a fan of the change something as opposed to build something. In fact, I have a quote that was relevant to earlier that we pulled up. I forget what we were talking about, but it is now again relevant. So that's awesome. One of my favorite quotes from Buckmeister Fuller, and it says, don't kill what you hate, save what you love. Don't try to destroy the old bad models, render them obsolete with new, better models. And I think she would really resonate with the don't to completely destroy a thing and then have a new thing rise from the ashes. Take what you love and kind of, it's better to change than it is to destroy and rebuild, you know? So I think she would. I'm sure there maybe might be some individual decisions that she might have disagreed with Darrow on, But yeah, I think by and large she'd be pretty stoked with the route that he's taken and the sacrifices that he's made. What about you, Effie?
I would agree. Because I think that she was a real like radical at heart. Like even though she didn't know the full extent of the slavery and like the extent of the hierarchy and like how everything had already been like fully terraformed and settled, like she was onto them, and her first like instinct was violence. So I think like she would be okay with everything because it was clear that what he was doing was trying for like a more systemic takedown than like, kind of like you said, like it's more of like a like getting in and liberating his people rather than like just fucking it all up and killing everyone for like just how would that help, you know? I think she would, I think it was smart enough that she would be like, all right, yeah.
I think my answer is just a tiny bit more nuanced than this, but like I think that if Io was alive like before Darrow spoke with Dancer, before Darrow went into this whole process, she probably would have been like, burn it all down, like burn all of this, like fuck them all, like kill as many as you can, like get in there. She would have been on like the side of Ares, of like blowing up coffee shops and stuff. But like
she's
that.
Smart.
But that's kind of how she was at the because she doesn't know the full extent of this situation.
Yeah,
like,
you're right.
You know what I mean? Like so, like at the beginning of the book. She like I agree with what Effie says. She was a radical. Like she was very much like let's do whatever it takes. I mean, she was willing to die for this cause without even knowing the full scope of the cause. You know what I mean? Like she was as extreme as you could possibly be with this. Yeah. If she had bombs, she would have set them off. You know. But I think that like if she was with Darrow every step of the way, she would have understood everything just as much as Darrow had come to understand exactly why he was there too,
and realized they could never win a battle on Battlefront.
No, absolutely.
Like they're never going to face off against the Golds and win. Like they're going to lose.
Even
they have
every single like this isn't A Bug's Life. You know what I mean? Like this isn't like those ants. Like
there's thousands of them.
Yeah, like you let one ant stand up, and they all might stand. And they all like that's they're not worried. Like I said before. Like I really don't think the Golds are as worried because like they really do have such a hold on this society. Like all the Reds put together, I don't think could stage the kind of revolution that Io probably had dreamed of initially, which is one of the things that's so interesting about this book is how that idea of revolution really progresses throughout like Darrow gaining more knowledge about what he's up against, you know? I mean, and I think that might be one of the best things about the Reds, and one of the things that Nero had explained in his speech is their flexibility, their adaptability, like their ability to like rise up in the face of adversity and bear those scars that the Golds can't necessarily bear, you know? So he's kind of onto something there when he's talking like that, but it's mostly rhetoric to pump up the Golds. But you know, like rhetoric is interesting like that.
It is, yeah. It's funny how one message can be applied to a bunch of different people and kind of mean the same thing. Like the same pump up speech could be used in different, you know, with enemies, and each side is like, you know.
I do agree with you though. That's my long-winded way of saying, like, I do agree that Io would be ultimately very happy with how Darrow has handled himself.
Smart in the long run,
She probably wouldn't be happy to see him hooking up with Mustang that quickly.
What the fuck?
I mean, they didn't really hook up though, right? Like they didn't. Did they have sex?
He kissed her. No, he kissed her.
Yeah, they didn't. Yeah,
he kissed on the lips.
No, he kissed her on the lips. So he felt real bad about it.
Yeah, but I mean, it was pretty quick.
He thought about it though. He thought about it. He was like, we have time. There's a bed.
Yeah,
but like,
dude, your wife just died. Like. I mean, feel like months ago, I guess.
It was like a year ago.
Was it a year?
I feel like she would be like,
in
their hearts, you can destroy their arms. You know, like you know, I feel like she'd be like, whatever means necessary, though she wouldn't enjoy watching that
would
necessarily.
Be like, do it for sure. Get in there, Daryl.
Super stoked about his choosing like of Augustus. Like, really, the guy that like literally put me to death. He's your patron.
He's got to go as high as possible.
Yeah. She was ruthless. She would have liked it, I guess, but still, that would have been hard.
I had a question right away when I started reading the like after Darrow died, which by the way, his death scene, Io's death scene was like this long beautiful, heartbreaking. Just it was
Violent.
so tragic. I was crying.
No, Effie came
I
down
cried.
to my office like
Oh,
banging
I
on
was
the
gonna
door.
ask you if you cried at all during
Oh,
this. Thank
yeah.
you for
Oh, I
answering that.
cried hard. I ugly cried. I was like
Yeah.
really. I
No,
was
Effie
really
came down to
sad.
my office while I was like recording something, and then Effie was like banging on my door, and I was like, just a second, and then she like banged on it again.
Like,
I was like, whoa, oh no, God! So I like opened up the door, and Effie's just like holding the book in her hand. She's like, this book is too sad.
It's like in the first like 30
I felt
pages.
so bad.
Dude.
Yeah, it was like I was like, oh no, did I just read Wedding Her like all over again? Like I just totally forgot.
I don't want to watch this
Because
anymore.
I remembered, yeah, because I hadn't.
It was awful.
When she was crying, like I hadn't started the book yet, because I was just like, busy with other stuff, and I was like, oh my God, like what part was it? And then she described the part, and I was like, oh yeah, that was really bad. Oh no.
And then it gets worse. Like she dies, and that's awful.
It gets worse.
And then he like carries her into the garden where like, and the reason why they got punished was being in the garden. He takes her to the garden because she loved it, and like all the people are touching her, and he buries her. It fucked me up.
Yeah,
I mean, she was the one who had to pull on her legs to break her neck so she didn't strangle to death too. And it like describes that. You're like, oh, it's so rough. And yet this is a young adult book. Sure.
So like her death scene and all that. And then it just goes right into like, Darrow, hey, everyone's really sad for you, and now you're gonna die. And then he like gets hung like 2 paragraphs later. Like it's crazy. Like it was so fast.
Without any sort of like penance or any sort of celebration
like,
or anything.
Yeah,
no tears.
Like everyone was just like bummed, but like, and then he died. And so that was crazy. I thought like his death scene, I was like kind of startled. But then once he was with the Sons of Ares, I couldn't help but like wonder, and maybe this is just me always like looking for twists and clues, but like
it's a lot like Chad.
Yeah, I was like, is Dancer his dad? Is Dancer like secretly his dad?
I mean, Daryl's dad is dead.
But is he? Because Darrow died.
Right.
Hidden dancer trope.
I mean, I think like Daryl would probably recognize his dad.
Well, I thought that too, but then I was like, no, he was really young. He was really young when it happened. And
They've
then
got Mickey.
What?
They've got Mickey too. I mean, maybe Dancer would like rearrange his face or something.
I don't even think he would need to do that. He was super young.
Totally. Yeah.
And then like he died, if I can remember, he was like very young when his dad died. And it's like he might have they don't have like pictures of people, you know. And so it's like I was wondering because he like limped and he was all kind of like fucked up, but he was like old. And I was like, is this guy his dad?
I mean, if he was, we wouldn't tell you anyway. So
yeah. I honestly don't remember, but I don't think that it was. I think Dancer is just an opportunist looking for the perfect situation. And here he's got this wife who he can now use this video. She's singing the song "Perfect Death." Let's use this as a martyr, which is powerful. And then who better to have as his get him down from the inside, someone who's very brave, very dexterous, physically and mentally very capable, because he's one of the what do they call it? What are the miners? Helldivers. Yeah, Hell, which was so awesome.
Yeah,
love that.
Cool name.
And I love they have like the curved blades with them, so just in case, like they only carry these blades to save their own life should a limb get trapped within the equipment. They can cut it off.
Hard.
Yeah, they're hard. They're hard. Exactly. So like, what better of a guy? Like his wife is the martyr, is the face of the movement. This person's gonna have to go through massive hardship to even kind of live. And he wasn't the first one. Obviously he wasn't the first one that he's tried. He said like Nikki said there was like tons of others that had died 90. Before him, and then Titus did make it, so there might even be others that are in the golddom currently that we don't know about.
Right. Is there like another faction of the Sons of Ares that are like also doing the same thing? Or like, did they just have Titus, but they didn't tell him?
I think you need to read the second book. We're only the first book in.
So what do you think is predictions, Effie? What do you think is going to happen during this next book as we wrap up here?
I mean, Evan just keeps saying it's crazy.
What does that mean to you?
Golden Sun is wild. Yeah,
he just keeps saying it's so crazy. And so
just like
I don't know.
Sure. Just like that, exactly.
Kind of just like that.
Yeah.
I don't know what. I know that I'm guessing that it'll be like more of his schooling or like his apprenticeship or like.
Well, they're off to the academy next.
Yeah, so it's like maybe more of that. Maybe he meets other, and that was my other question. Is so this whole school situation, like there are all these planets with all these golds on each one,
Yeah.
and like he came from another planet, so that seemed normal. But like, is this the only school in the solar system, or are there schools on each planet?
I think
Or,
this is
like-
the only one.
I think that the Mars is, the moon, like Luna, obviously, is where the sovereign is, but Mars, I think, has the highest population after the war with Earth.
Since it was
That-
so close.
Yeah, because it mentioned like the Luna's, the sovereign's son was there, right? He was killed by Severo, I believe.
Was that
What?
the
He was like the
sovereign's son?
prodigy.
What? No,
Maybe not. Which was the dude who was killed by Severo, who was like
I can't
a
remember
fluke?
his name.
Oh my
Like
god!
Primus
Wait,
or something?
Was it her son?
No.
It was like a major. He was
maybe?
very high up though, and he
I
was like
remember-
lauded as like.
Yeah, I can't remember who it was like exactly.
Oh my god! Wait,
'Cause I know
have to look
Severo
this
was
up.
like 99th when
Yeah.
they ranked everybody, and like he was not supposed to make it through at all. Oh my gosh, we didn't even talk about Severo.
Oh my
my
god,
favorite
Severos! I liked him a lot.
Yeah. He's the best.
I can't find the name
Oh.
of that kid who he killed.
So this is a juicier question anyway. But this kind of leads into the question, Effie, we were asking you about what you think happens in the next book. Did you notice that Darrow noticed that Severo deleted Darrow saying "bloody damn"?
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
because Severo is pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Big,
Severo is kind
big
of like
reveal
another
there.
one of those golds that is of a different philosophy.
Yep.
I mean, like, you find out that Fitchner's his dad, which I was actually, that was one of the twists that I hadn't, like, totally predicted.
I mean, everybody's connected,
Right.
Like,
And he kind of like knew some stuff that the other kids didn't. So I figured he like was connected in some way, but Fitchner was a different kind of gold too. It sounded like he kind of had to work harder than most to get to where he was.
Yeah.
And so Severo, what did Chad say about the generations?
From
His
shirt
dad-
sleeves.
Yeah, his dad
Yeah.
worked really hard and Severo was there to see that. So I don't know, maybe he's like a little bit more tapped in to things. And I take that back. Obviously he is, because he immediately went on his own and lived with the wolves. So like this guy is cool and he is not like other golds. And I think he will continue to be like an ally or like a friend. I think so. That's my prediction.
I agree. I think he values a lot. I think he values loyalty, kind of as being coming from the bottom of gold, and kind of being smart enough to realize he was really put into, because he was put up against Priam Alcan, who was not the house of anyone Luna related, but he was the son of a banner woman of House Bologna, who owns 2 moons of Mars. That's where the moon thing came from in my mind. And he was supposed to be, Severo was supposed to die to him because he was like an up and coming, savant, everyone, an up and comer. And Severo then killed him, stomped his throat.
And Severo knew that. He knew he was supposed to die.
Right. So I think he's going to value the loyalty, and even he doesn't really care that he's a red. He's like, I know because I'm from the bottom, though he doesn't truly, but he thinks that he knows what it's like because he's from the bottom of the golds. And so he maybe even kind of like finds Darrow even more relatable.
Yeah. Even if he doesn't fully understand, because maybe he didn't recognize the word the way that Darrow did when Titus said it, but he suspected that something about it was weird enough that he should cut it. And that's what makes him cool. That and how he lived with the wolves.
Yeah. And he's just so brutal. He killed Priam in the passage by just stomping his trachea until he died.
Jesus Christ.
Whoa. I'm really excited to read Golden Sun, and I'm sure my memory will be even more excited as I remember things as I read them. And I'm excited that we have Effie along for the ride. And has anyone got anything else before we wrap here?
Well, I think that's it for me. What about you, Effie?
No, that's it. That's it for me.
Cool. Everybody, thank you so much for listening to this episode. We're so happy to have Effie on as a guest for all 6 of these books. Book 6, Lightbringer, comes out at the end of this month, which we're all really excited about. We went to the bookstore earlier because I had to pick up a copy of Dark Age, and it's 750 pages long. So
It's so big.
Wow.
I was not aware. I've never owned a copy of Dark Age, so when I picked it up, I was definitely pretty surprised at its length. And I don't know how long Lightbringer is, but we've definitely got some episodes and some conversations ahead of us.
Yeah, we
Oh,
do.
God.
Yep, it's a lot.
I'm excited.
Well, until then, everybody, thank you so much for listening. Join us next time for Golden Sun. Hopefully, all of you are not too traumatized by the wild events that are going to be happening in the next few books, because it definitely gets pretty dark. But until then, like I said, hope you have an awesome rest of your day. And of course, happy reading.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
You have to do it like that
Nailed
every
it.
time now.
Yep.
Bye.